The transport ship, Zephyrian Dawn, hummed through the void of space, carrying its mixed crew of humans and aliens toward the mining station on Kepler 442c. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, reviewing the mining reports on her holographic display. The numbers looked promising. This planet held more rare minerals than they had seen in years. "Captain," called out Zixara, the ship's young Veltharian navigator. Her purple skin shimmered under the bridge lights, and her large golden eyes reflected the star charts she was studying. "We're approaching the planet's orbit. Should I begin the landing sequence?" Sarah nodded. "Take us down, Zix. Nice and easy." Zixara had been with the crew for only 3 months, fresh out of the Galactic Navigation Academy. She was brilliant at her job, but still amazed by human behavior. Her species, the Veltharians, were known for being cautious and methodical. Humans, she had learned, were quite the opposite. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Sarah's first officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, approached her chair. "Captain, I've been looking at the geological surveys. There's something interesting about this planet." "What kind of interesting?" Sarah asked, keeping her eyes on the view screen as the rocky surface came into view. "The core is unstable. Not dangerous right now, but the seismic activity suggests this planet might not be suitable for long-term mining operations." Zixara's pointed ears twitched as she overheard the conversation. In Veltharian culture, any sign of danger meant immediate withdrawal. Her people had survived for millions of years by being careful and avoiding unnecessary risks. "How unstable are we talking?" Sarah asked. Marcus pulled up a holographic display of the planet's cross-section. "The core temperature is rising. Our scientists estimate we have maybe 6 months before major volcanic activity begins. After that, the planet becomes uninhabitable." Sarah studied the data for a moment, then smiled. 6 months? That's plenty of time." Zixara's eyes widened in shock. "Captain, did you say plenty of time? The planet is going to become a volcanic wasteland." "Exactly," Sarah said, standing up from her chair, "which means we're probably the only ones crazy enough to mine here. No competition." The young Veltharian stared at her captain in disbelief. "But Captain, what if the volcanic activity starts early? What if there's an earthquake that damages our equipment? What if the lava flows reach our mining sites?" "Then we'll deal with it when it happens," Sarah said casually. "Zix, in my 20 years of space travel, I've learned that the biggest rewards come from the biggest risks." As they landed on the planet's surface, Zixara couldn't shake her anxiety. The mining station was a massive structure, designed to extract precious metals from deep underground. But knowing that the planet was essentially a ticking time bomb made her nervous. The crew began unloading their equipment, and Sarah gathered everyone for a briefing. The team consisted of 12 humans and 4 aliens, including Zixara and 2 other Veltharians, plus a Krogian engineer named Thok. "All right, everyone," Sarah announced. "I'm sure you've all heard about the planet's geological situation by now. Yes, this rock is going to turn into a volcano in a few months. No, we're not leaving." Thok, the massive Krogian with stone-like skin, grunted his approval. His species were miners by nature and appreciated the human approach to danger. The 3 Veltharians, however, looked terrified. "I know this seems crazy to some of you," Sarah continued, "but this planet contains enough rare minerals to fund our operations for the next 10 years. The risk is worth it." After the briefing, Zixara approached Sarah privately. "Captain, I don't understand human thinking. Why would you risk your life for minerals? Your species could find safer ways to make money." Sarah sat down on a supply crate and gestured for Zixara to join her. "Let me tell you something about humans, Zix. We've been taking crazy risks since we first climbed down from the trees. Every major advancement in our civilization came from someone willing to do something dangerous." "But surely there are limits?" Zixara asked. Are there? Sarah smiled. Did you know that when humans first started exploring space, our rockets had less computing power than the communicator you're wearing on your wrist? We strapped ourselves to controlled explosions and shot ourselves into the void, hoping for the best. Zixara's golden eyes grew even wider. That sounds terrifying. It was, but it got us to the stars. Sarah stood up and looked out at the mining equipment being assembled. Every species in the galaxy thinks we're insane. The Veltharians think we're reckless. The Zephyrians think we're primitive. The Andromedans think we're suicidal. But you know what? We're the ones who colonized the most dangerous planets, explored the most hostile regions of space, and pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Over the next few days, the mining operation began in earnest. The humans worked with an efficiency that amazed Zixara. They seemed completely unbothered by the occasional ground tremors or the fact that they were literally standing on top of a geological time bomb. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the team's geologist, was particularly fascinating to watch. She would rappel into deep crevices to collect samples, completely ignoring the obvious danger. When Zixara asked her about it, Elena just laughed. "Honey, I grew up in Mexico City. I've been living on unstable ground my whole life. This is just Tuesday for me." The mining equipment worked around the clock, extracting tons of valuable materials from the planet's crust. The humans had developed remarkably efficient techniques, using controlled explosions and advanced drilling methods that would have terrified most alien species. One afternoon, while Zixara was updating the navigation charts, a massive earthquake shook the entire mining station. The Veltharian crew members immediately rushed to the escape pods, but the humans barely paused in their work. "Magnitude 6.2, called out Marcus, reading from his geological scanner. "Pretty strong one." "Should we evacuate the deep mining shafts?" asked one of the human miners over the communication system. Sarah checked her readings. "Negative. The structural integrity is still good. Keep digging." Zixara stared at the humans in amazement. "Captain, that earthquake could have killed everyone in those tunnels." "Could have," Sarah agreed. "But it didn't. And now we know the tunnels can handle that level of seismic activity." As the weeks passed, Zixara began to understand something about humans that no textbook had ever taught her. It wasn't that they were fearless. They were afraid of things just like everyone else. The difference was that they had learned to function despite their fear. She watched as Dr. Rodriguez descended into increasingly dangerous shafts, her hands shaking slightly as she clipped her safety harness. She was scared, but she did it anyway. She observed Marcus coordinating mining operations while constantly monitoring seismic readings, knowing that one wrong calculation could get everyone killed. He was nervous, but he kept working. She saw Sarah making decision after decision that could endanger the entire crew, her jaw tight with tension. The captain was worried, but she never stopped moving forward. "Why do you do it?" Zixara asked Dr. Rodriguez one evening as they shared dinner in the mess hall. "Do what?" "Put yourselves in danger. Push forward when any reasonable being would retreat." Elena thought for a moment. "I guess because that's how we've always been. Humans have this saying, 'Fortune favors the bold.' We've learned that the biggest discoveries, the greatest achievements, they usually come from doing things that seem impossible. But what if you fail? What if you die?" "Then we fail," Elena said simply. "But at least we tried. Do you know what the worst feeling in the universe is, Zix? It's not dying while attempting something great. It's living your whole life wondering what might have been if you had just tried." That night, Zixara lay in her quarters thinking about the conversation. On her homeworld, safety was the highest virtue. Veltharians lived long, peaceful lives by avoiding unnecessary risks. But watching the humans work, seeing their determination and ingenuity, she began to wonder if her people were missing something important. The mining operation was incredibly successful. In just 1 month, they had extracted more rare minerals than most expeditions found in a year. The humans' willingness to work in dangerous conditions had paid off tremendously. But as the planetary geological activity increased, even Sarah began to show concern. The earthquakes were getting stronger and more frequent. Lava flows had been spotted on the far side of the continent. "Captain," Marcus reported during their morning briefing, "the seismic activity is accelerating faster than predicted. We might only have 2 more weeks instead of the projected 3 months. The Veltharian crew members looked relieved, assuming this would finally convince the humans to leave. But Sarah just nodded thoughtfully. 2 weeks, she mused. We can work with 2 weeks. Let's increase the mining shifts to 20 hours a day. Zixara couldn't contain herself anymore. Captain, do you really want that? Do you really want to risk all of our lives for a few more tons of minerals? Sarah turned to look at the young navigator, and for the first time since Zixara had known her, the captain's expression was completely serious. Zix, let me ask you something. What do you think built human civilization? What got us from being primitive cave dwellers to traveling between the stars? Intelligence? Technology? Those helped, Sarah said. But the real answer is that we were always willing to do what needed to be done, even when it was dangerous, even when it seemed impossible, even when everyone else said we were crazy. The next 2 weeks became a test of human determination that Zixara would never forget. As the planet's geological activity intensified, the humans pushed their mining operation to its absolute limits. They worked 20-hour shifts, sleeping in 4-hour rotations, extracting every possible gram of precious materials before the world literally exploded around them. Zixara found herself caught between terror and fascination. Every day brought new challenges that would have sent any sensible species running for their ships. Massive earthquakes split the ground open, revealing glowing lava far below. Volcanic vents began opening across the landscape, spewing toxic gases into the atmosphere. The mining station's structural supports groaned under the constant stress. Yet the humans adapted to each new crisis with remarkable creativity. When the main drilling platform was damaged by falling rocks, engineer Jake Morrison simply welded additional supports using materials salvaged from damaged equipment. When toxic gases threatened to poison the air recycling systems, Dr. Rodriguez jury-rigged a filtration system using spare parts from their laboratory equipment. "This is insane," muttered Velkar, one of the other Veltharian crew members, as he watched human miners working just meters away from a newly formed lava vent. "They're going to get themselves killed!" But Zixara was beginning to see something else. The humans weren't being reckless. They were being incredibly careful. Every risk was calculated. Every dangerous operation was planned down to the smallest detail. They just had a very different definition of acceptable risk than most species. Captain Chen stood in the mining command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing seismic readings, extraction rates, and safety protocols. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail that hadn't been washed in days, and there were dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. But her focus was absolute. "Marcus, what's the status on Tunnel 7?" she asked. "Structural integrity holding at 85%, he replied, monitoring multiple screens simultaneously. "But the temperature is rising. We're approaching the safe operating limit. How much more can we extract from that section?" "Maybe 6 hours of work if we're lucky." Sarah nodded. "Do it, but pull everyone out the moment integrity drops below 80%. Zixara watched this exchange with growing amazement. The humans were making split-second decisions that balanced enormous risks against tremendous rewards. They were operating in conditions that would have killed most species, yet their casualty rate was 0. "How do they do it?" she asked Thok, the Krogian engineer. His people were known for their toughness, but even they respected human tenacity. Thok's gravelly voice rumbled with approval. "Humans understand something that most species forget: Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is nothing at all. Over the next few days, Zixara began to understand what he meant. While her people would have evacuated at the first sign of danger, the humans had recognized an opportunity. This planet contained enough rare minerals to revolutionize space travel technology. The materials they were extracting could power faster-than-light engines, create stronger hull plating, and develop more efficient life support systems. By leaving now, they wouldn't just lose potential profits, they would lose the chance to advance galactic civilization by decades. Dr. Rodriguez explained it to her while they worked together to catalog mineral samples. Zix, do you know why humans became the most successful explorers in the galaxy? Because you're willing to take crazy risks? Because we understand that some things are worth the risk, Elena corrected. Every major leap forward in human history came from someone deciding that the potential reward was worth the danger. She gestured to the mineral samples around them. These materials could revolutionize space travel. Ships could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. We could explore regions of space that are currently unreachable. Entire new worlds could be opened to colonization. Zixara picked up one of the samples, a crystalline structure that seemed to glow with internal energy. But what if you all die extracting it? Then other humans will learn from our mistakes and try again, Elena said simply. That's how we've always done things. Someone has to be willing to go first, to push the boundaries, to fail so that others can succeed. The conversation was interrupted by another massive earthquake. This one was stronger than any they had experienced before, shaking the entire mining station so violently that several crew members were thrown to the ground. Warning alarms blared throughout the facility. "That was magnitude 7.8, Marcus shouted over the noise. "All mining operations need to cease immediately." But instead of panic, Zixara saw something remarkable happen. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, implementing emergency protocols that they had drilled countless times. Mining crews evacuated dangerous areas in orderly fashion. Equipment was secured to prevent damage. Emergency supplies were distributed to key locations. Within 30 minutes, the station was operating normally again, although several mining tunnels had been permanently sealed due to structural damage. "Assessment report," Sarah called out once things had settled. "We lost access to tunnels 4, 7, and 12, Marcus reported. "Structural damage to the main drilling platform, but it's still operational. No injuries." Sarah studied the data for a moment. "How much material can we still extract?" "Maybe 3 more days of operation, assuming no more major seismic events." "And the probability of more major seismic events?" Marcus checked his geological readings. 100%. The volcanic activity is accelerating. We're looking at major eruptions within the week." The Veltharian crew members looked at each other nervously. Surely this would convince the humans to leave. But Sarah just nodded thoughtfully. 3 more days, she said. "That's enough time to extract another 40 tons of material. Let's make it count." Zixara couldn't hold back anymore. "Captain, do you really want that? Do you really want to risk everyone's lives for a few more tons of minerals when the planet is about to explode?" Sarah turned to face the young navigator, and Zixara saw something in the captain's eyes that she had never noticed before. It wasn't recklessness or madness. It was a deep, unshakable conviction. "Zix, let me tell you about the first human who decided to cross an ocean," Sarah said quietly. "Everyone thought he was insane. The ocean was vast and unknown. His ship could sink, he could starve, he could sail off the edge of the world for all anyone knew. But he did it anyway. He did it anyway. And because of that crazy decision, humans discovered new continents, new resources, new possibilities. Everything that followed, our entire expansion into space, started with someone being willing to sail into the unknown." Sarah gestured to the mining operation around them. This isn't just about minerals, Zix. This is about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Every species in the galaxy has looked at planets like this and decided they're too dangerous to exploit. But we're proving that with the right preparation, the right technology, and the right mindset, even the most hostile environments can be conquered. Over the final 3 days, Zixara watched the humans perform what could only be described as miracles. They extracted minerals from increasingly dangerous locations, always staying one step ahead of the planet's geological fury. They developed new mining techniques on the fly, improvising solutions to problems that had never been encountered before. Dr. Rodriguez invented a new type of drilling probe that could operate in extreme temperatures. Engineer Morrison created modular support systems that could be rapidly deployed in unstable tunnels. The mining crew developed techniques for working in protective suits that could withstand volcanic gases. Each innovation was driven by necessity, but Zixara realized that this was how humans had always advanced. They didn't develop new technology in comfortable laboratories. They created it while facing impossible challenges. On the final day, as lava flows began appearing on the horizon and the ground shook almost continuously, the humans completed their extraction operation. They had pulled nearly 200 tons of rare minerals from the planet's crust, more than had ever been extracted from a single location. But even as they prepared to leave, Zixara noticed that the humans weren't quite ready to give up. "Marcus," Sarah said, studying the geological readouts one more time, "how long do we have before the major eruptions begin?" "Maybe 6 hours," he replied. 8 at the absolute maximum. Sarah nodded slowly. "And there's still that rich vein in Tunnel 15. The entire bridge crew stared at her in disbelief. Even by human standards, this was pushing things too far. But Zixara was beginning to understand something about human nature that no alien species had ever fully grasped. Humans didn't take risks because they were stupid or suicidal. They took risks because they had an absolute, unshakable faith in their ability to overcome any challenge. They had climbed their way from primitive cave dwellers to galactic explorers by refusing to accept limitations. "Captain," Zixara said quietly, "I think I'm beginning to understand." Sarah looked at her with curiosity. "Understand what?" "Why humans succeed where other species fail. It's not because you're not afraid. It's because you do what needs to be done despite your fear." The captain smiled. "Now you're getting it." As the Zephyrian dawn lifted off from the doomed planet, carrying its precious cargo of rare minerals, Zixara looked back at the volcanic landscape through the view screen. Even now, she could see the humans planning their next impossible mission. 3 months later, Zixara stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Mining Consortium on Station Nexus Prime. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to hear the results of the Kepler 442c mining expedition. The rare minerals extracted from the doomed planet had already revolutionized several industries, and everyone wanted to know how the humans had succeeded where others had failed. Admiral Kethvar of the Andromedian Fleet, a tall, pale being with silver eyes, spoke first. "Captain Chen, the consortium requires a full explanation of your methods. How did you extract such quantities of material from a geologically unstable planet without losing a single crew member?" Sarah stood at the central podium, her uniform crisp and professional, but Zixara could see the hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. "Admiral, we used a combination of advanced planning, adaptive technology, and calculated risk assessment." Calculated risk. The Zephyrian representative, a creature that looked like a walking crystal formation, chimed with obvious skepticism. "You operated mining equipment within kilometers of active volcanic vents. Our analysis shows that any reasonable safety protocol would have required immediate evacuation." "That's correct," Sarah agreed. "Under standard safety protocols, the operation would have been impossible." So we developed new ones. Zixara watched as murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembly. The concept of developing new safety standards in real time was alien to most species. They preferred to establish comprehensive protocols in advance and stick to them regardless of circumstances. Director Velthuran, the elderly Veltharian who led the consortium, leaned forward in her chair. Captain Chen, please explain these new protocols. Sarah activated a holographic display showing the mining operation. Traditional mining safety relies on maintaining stable, controlled conditions. When those conditions can't be maintained, most species abort the operation. Humans take a different approach. The display showed the human mining crews working in conditions that made the alien representatives visibly uncomfortable. Miners operating just meters from lava flows, engineers welding support beams while wearing heat-resistant suits, geologists collecting samples from the edges of volcanic vents. Instead of requiring stable conditions, we design our operations to function in unstable ones, Sarah continued. Every piece of equipment, every safety protocol, every work procedure was designed to adapt to changing conditions rather than depend on static ones. Thok, the Krogian engineer who had been part of the expedition, stepped forward to support Sarah's explanation. Human mining techniques incorporate redundancy at every level. If one approach fails, they immediately implement another. If equipment breaks, they repair or replace it with available materials. If conditions change, they change their methods. Admiral Kethvar's silver eyes narrowed. This sounds extremely dangerous. What was your casualty rate? 0, Sarah replied simply. The chamber fell completely silent. Zixara could see the shock on every alien face. A 0 casualty rate on a mission that dangerous was considered impossible by galactic standards. That's highly improbable, Director Velthuran said slowly. Our calculations suggest that operating in such conditions should have resulted in significant losses. Dr. Rodriguez stood up from the human delegation. Director, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about human risk assessment. We don't accept casualties as inevitable. We design our operations to prevent them. She activated her own holographic display showing detailed safety protocols that the humans had implemented. Every dangerous operation was planned with multiple backup systems. Every crew member was cross-trained in emergency procedures. Every piece of equipment had redundant safety features. The Zephyrian representative chimed again, this time with what sounded like frustration. But the energy expenditure must have been enormous. These safety measures would require constant monitoring, continuous adaptation, massive resource allocation. Yes, Sarah agreed, but the alternative was accepting that dangerous conditions meant inevitable losses. Humans don't accept that. Zixara realized this was the moment she had been waiting for. She stood up from her seat in the Veltharian section. Permission to speak, Director? Director Velthuran looked surprised but nodded. Navigator Zixara, you may proceed. Zixara walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the eyes of hundreds of beings upon her. Honored representatives, I served aboard the Zephyrian Dawn during the Kepler 442c expedition. I observed human behavior firsthand, and I believe I can explain what we witnessed. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Every species in this chamber has achieved galactic civilization by being careful, by avoiding unnecessary risks, by maintaining stable, predictable operations. This is logical and has served us well. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. But humans achieved galactic civilization through a completely different approach. They succeeded by being willing to enter unstable situations and then adapting to make them work. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward. Are you suggesting that reckless behavior is somehow superior to careful planning? No, Admiral. I'm suggesting that humans aren't reckless at all. They're incredibly careful, but their definition of careful is different from ours. Zixara activated a display showing human technological development throughout history. Humans developed spaceflight by strapping themselves to controlled explosions. They learned to navigate by sailing into unknown oceans. They built their civilization by entering hostile environments and then developing the technology to survive there. That sounds like the definition of recklessness, the Zephyrian representative chimed. Does it? Zixara asked. Or does it sound like a species that has learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy others? She changed the display to show comparative technological advancement rates. Humans went from primitive tool use to galactic civilization in less than 50,000 years. The Veltharians took 2 million years. The Zephyrians took even longer. The Andromedians achieved space flight, but their expansion rate has been extremely slow. The numbers were undeniable. Human technological advancement had proceeded at a rate that was unprecedented in galactic history. The difference, Zixara continued, is that humans don't wait for conditions to become safe before they act. They enter dangerous situations and then develop the technology and techniques to make them safe. Director Velthuran studied the data with obvious interest. Navigator, are you suggesting that our approach to safety and risk management is somehow flawed? Not flawed, Director, just different. Veltharian approaches work well for Veltharians, but they wouldn't work for humans, and human approaches wouldn't work for us. Zixara looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from different species. I spent weeks watching humans work in conditions that terrified me. I kept expecting them to make fatal mistakes, to push their luck too far, to finally face a challenge they couldn't overcome. But they didn't, she continued. And I gradually realized why. Humans don't rely on luck. They rely on preparation, adaptation, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. Sarah smiled at her navigator's words. Zixara has identified something important. Humans succeed in dangerous situations because we've been doing it for our entire evolutionary history. We developed in one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy, a planet with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and limited resources. She gestured to the mineral samples that were displayed around the chamber. The techniques we used on Kepler 442c weren't revolutionary. They were applications of the same principles that got us from hiding in caves to traveling between stars. Engineer Morrison stood up to add his perspective. Every challenge we faced on that planet was just a variation of problems humans have been solving for thousands of years. Unstable ground. We learned to build on earthquake zones. Toxic atmosphere. We learned to work in environments from deep ocean to airless mountains. Extreme temperatures. We learned to function in deserts and Arctic regions. The Krogian representative, a massive being with stone-like features, rumbled his approval. Humans are the only species that actively seeks out hostile environments for the purpose of conquering them. Admiral Kethvar still looked skeptical. This approach seems unnecessarily dangerous. Why not wait for technology to advance to the point where such operations can be conducted safely? It was Dr. Rodriguez who answered. Because, Admiral, that technology doesn't develop by itself. Someone has to push the boundaries, to work in conditions that are beyond current capabilities, to identify the problems that need solving. She activated a display showing technological innovations that had emerged from the Kepler 442c expedition. In just 3 months of operation under extreme conditions, we developed 17 new mining techniques, 12 new safety protocols, and 8 new equipment designs. These innovations didn't come from laboratory research. They came from necessity. Zixara nodded enthusiastically. I watched this happen firsthand. When standard drilling equipment couldn't handle the heat, humans modified it in real time. When structural supports failed under seismic stress, they designed new ones on the spot. When toxic gases threatened air supplies, they built new filtration systems using spare parts. Each challenge forced innovation, she continued, and each innovation made future operations safer and more efficient. Director Velthuran was studying the technological advancement data with obvious fascination. This suggests that adversity itself drives advancement. Exactly, Sarah said. Humans don't advance despite facing challenges. We advance because we face challenges. The chamber fell silent as the representatives processed this concept. Most galactic species had achieved advancement through careful, methodical research conducted in safe, controlled conditions. The idea that progress could come from deliberately seeking out danger was revolutionary. Finally, Admiral Kethvar spoke. Captain Chen, the Andromedian fleet has been planning an exploration mission to the Void sector for the past 50 years. Our analysis suggests the region is too dangerous for standard exploration protocols. He paused, his silver eyes focusing intently on Sarah. Would human crews be willing to undertake such a mission? Sarah's smile widened. Admiral, how dangerous are we talking? Gravitational anomalies that could destroy ships, radiation levels that would kill most species within hours, space-time distortions that could trap vessels permanently. Sounds interesting, Sarah replied. When do we start? The alien representatives stared at her in amazement. Even knowing what they now knew about human psychology, the casual acceptance of such extreme danger was shocking. Zixara stepped forward. Admiral, if you approve this mission, I would like to request transfer to the human crew. Director Velthuran looked at her in surprise. Navigator, that would be extremely dangerous. Yes, Director, Zixara replied, her golden eyes shining with determination. That's exactly why I want to do it. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Zixara approached Sarah. Captain, I understand now why humans succeed where others fail. Oh? And why is that? Because you never ask, do you really want that? When facing something dangerous, Zixara said with a smile. You ask, how do we make that possible? Sarah laughed. Welcome to the crew, Navigator. I think you're going to fit right in. As they walked toward the station's docking bay where the Zephyrian Dawn waited, Zixara realized that she was no longer the same careful, cautious Veltharian who had joined the crew months ago. She had learned that sometimes the greatest safety came not from avoiding danger, but from developing the skills to overcome it. The Void Sector expedition would be the most dangerous mission ever attempted. Ships might be lost, crew members might not return, and the entire operation could end in disaster. But it might also open up entirely new regions of the galaxy, lead to revolutionary discoveries, and push the boundaries of what was considered possible. For the first time in her life, Zixara found herself genuinely excited about the unknown.